Welcome to our journey into the quiet heart of history. As you settle in, close your eyes and let your mind drift with the soft, whispering wind of the desert. Think of the Sahara. What comes to mind? An endless ocean of sand, golden dunes stretching for thousands of miles, a vast and silent emptiness where only the sun and the stars seem to exist. It is a place we have long considered a void, a great separator between worlds, a final resting place for the forgotten. But what if this silence is not emptiness? What if it is a guardian? Tonight, we will begin to peel back the layers of sand and time, not to find barren rock, but to uncover the possibility of a world buried beneath our feet. For centuries, explorers, scholars, and dreamers have told stories of strange clues left behind, of structures that could not be natural, and of myths that point to a place erased from our history books. What if the Sahara is not an ocean of sand, but an ocean of secrets? What if it's the most incredible archaeological site on the planet, hiding a civilization so magnificent, so advanced, that we've simply chosen to forget its existence? The stories say that beneath this silent sea of dunes lies a lost city, a city not built by men, but by gods. Join us now as we begin to follow the subtle hints that lead us into this forgotten world, starting with one of its most peculiar and mysterious monuments, the Eye of the Sahara. And so we turn our gaze from the desert as a whole to a single mesmerizing point within its heart. High above the golden sands of Mauritania, where the land stretches for hundreds of miles, a curious feature breaks the monotony. It is a perfect circle, a series of concentric rings etched into the earth like a colossal fingerprint. From the ground, it is merely a ripple in the landscape, a gentle, weathered depression, but from space, it is utterly unmistakable. It is known as the Richat Structure, but to many, it has a far more evocative name, the Eye of the Sahara. For decades, geologists have studied this magnificent anomaly, officially declaring it an eroded geological dome. They theorize that a bulge of rock rose from deep within the earth, and over millions of years, the softer layers were stripped away by wind and rain, leaving behind the harder, more resistant rings we see today. It's a compelling, logical explanation, and for a long time, it was the only one that science would accept. But the more you look at the eye, the more its perfect symmetry and unnerving precision begin to defy the chaotic forces of nature. Think about it for a moment. Nature is rarely so neat. The concentric rings are not just vaguely circular. They are almost perfectly circular, a geometry that is exceedingly rare in geological formations. Where is the evidence of the immense pressures and forces that would have created this dome? Why is there no sign of a cataclysmic impact, a celestial body crashing into the earth, which would have left a similar circular imprint? There is no melted rock, no shattered quartz, the telltale signatures of an ancient meteorite strike. It simply is a vast, silent eye staring out from the desert, seemingly untouched by the very chaos that should have shaped it. And so we are left with a question that hangs in the air like the desert heat. Could this be something else entirely? Could this be a structure, a city, not carved by the hands of time and erosion, but by the hands of an intelligent mind? A city so grand that its ruins dwarf the most incredible constructions of our own age? Let us take a moment and allow ourselves to explore a forgotten whisper of history. The great philosopher Plato, in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, gave us the most enduring description of the lost city of Atlantis. He described a metropolis of incredible power and sophistication, a city built on an island surrounded by rings of land and water. The central city was a series of 3 rings of water separated by 2 rings of land, connected to the sea by a grand canal. He described a city of immense scale, with colossal structures and a deep understanding of engineering. Now, let us place that description over a satellite image of the Richat Structure. The parallels are so striking, they almost feel like a deliberate signpost. The Richat Structure is not just a circle, it is a series of concentric rings, The central ring, the very pupil of the eye, is a massive circular structure. From that center, there appears to be an opening, a channel that cuts through the rings, leading to the outside. Ancient rivers, now dried up, once flowed out from the structure, a vast network of waterways that could easily be interpreted as the rings of water that Plato so vividly described. The Richat Structure's sheer scale is what truly sets it apart. It is over 40 kilometers wide. It is a monument so vast that its true form can only be appreciated from space. If this was a city, its concentric rings would have been massive walls and canals, its central island the seat of its power. This was not a small settlement, but a colossal metropolis, a hub of a great and powerful empire that once stretched across a verdant Sahara. What kind of civilization could build such a thing? What level of technology, what understanding of geometry, and what incredible resources would be required to lay out a city on such a magnificent scale? It suggests a precision and a grand vision that goes far beyond anything we've traditionally attributed to the ancient world. The Richat Structure stands as a silent challenge to our understanding of the past, a grand monument of a time forgotten. Could it be an eye watching us? Or is it a tombstone marking the grave of an entire civilization that was buried not by water, but by the relentless shifting sands of time? It is a question that opens the door to a much larger, more incredible story, a story about the true origins of our world. But let us not stop there. The whispers of Atlantis speak not only of its form, but of its function. Plato told of a central temple dedicated to Poseidon, a shrine so magnificent it was covered in silver, with a statue of the god riding a chariot pulled by 6 winged horses. In the very center, a pillar was inscribed with the laws of the gods. And on the central island, rituals were held involving the sacrifice of a sacred bull. While no expedition has ever been able to fully excavate the central platform of the Richat Structure, radar scans and ground-penetrating technology reveal anomalies, unusual shapes, and densities that could be the foundations of grand, forgotten structures. They are outlines in the sand, silent promises of a city waiting to be found. We must also consider the environment. It is a fundamental truth of human civilization that it cannot thrive without water. The idea of a bustling metropolis in today's Sahara seems impossible. But we now know with absolute certainty that the Sahara was not always a desert. For thousands of years, during a period known as the African Humid Period, this vast landscape was a green paradise. It was a land of flowing rivers, massive lakes, and lush savannas, a teeming ecosystem of giraffes, elephants, and hippos. This period ended suddenly and dramatically roughly 50 years ago. This timing is critical. It aligns with the ancient myths of a great flood or cataclysm that wiped out a pre-human civilization. It allows for the possibility of a powerful society rising and thriving in the heart of this verdant Eden before a swift and merciless climate shift turned their world into the desert we know today. Their grand canals would have dried up, their rivers turned to dust, their civilization buried by the very sand their land became. What remains today is a geological fossil, a ghostly imprint of what once was. The Eye of the Sahara is not merely a topographical curiosity. It is a piece of a puzzle, a silent witness to a pre-human history. It demands that we ask not just what it is, but who built it and why. It hints at a level of advanced knowledge that goes far beyond simple construction. Could the architects of this structure have possessed a deep understanding of celestial mechanics, using the eye as a giant observatory or calendar? Was its perfect circularity meant to channel a type of energy we no longer understand? Was it a testament to a divine order, a monument to the gods themselves? The ruins lie beneath us, shrouded in the sands of time, waiting for an expedition brave enough to defy the official narratives and the whispered warnings. The Eye of the Sahara is more than a landmark. It is a question, a memory, and perhaps a warning. A monumental tombstone that reminds us that civilizations no matter how great, can be swallowed whole by time, leaving behind only a whisper on the wind and a perfect enigmatic circle in the sand. The music shifts again, becoming more ancient and melodic, hinting at the next chapter's Egyptian theme. And that story begins not with us, but with the very gods of ancient Egypt, who spoke of a time before their own, a time they called Zep Tepi. As the image of the great eye of the Sahara begins to fade from our mind's eye, we turn to a new landscape, not of sand and stone, but of myth and memory. Let us journey into the ancient soul of one of the world's most enduring civilizations, the builders of the pyramids, the worshippers of Ra, the inheritors of a knowledge we can only begin to comprehend. The ancient Egyptians spoke not just of their own history, but of a time that came before it, a golden age so profound it formed the bedrock of their entire culture. They call this period Zep Tepi, a phrase that translates simply, yet with immense weight, to the first time. For the Egyptians, Zep Tepi was not a vague, mythical origin story. It was a foundational belief, a sacred era when the world was new and the cosmos was in perfect balance. It was a time when divine beings, which they referred to as the Neteru, descended from the heavens to earth. These Neteru were not simply anthropomorphic gods in the way we often imagine them. Their hieroglyphic descriptions suggest they were shining ones, luminous and powerful beings who were far more advanced than humanity. They arrived not to conquer but to teach. They were the architects of a golden age, bringing knowledge, laws, and the very foundations of civilization to mankind. Imagine it for a moment. This was not a gradual 1,000-year process of discovery, but a sudden transfer of knowledge. According to the ancient text, the Neteru taught humanity the arts of writing, giving them the hieroglyphs that would endure for millennia. They brought the wisdom of astronomy, allowing the Egyptians to align their great monuments with the stars and planets. They introduced the principles of medicine, agriculture, and metallurgy. They were the original grand architects, teaching the sacred geometry and advanced engineering that would later manifest in the impossibly precise pyramids and temples. They laid down the laws and morals of a just society, creating a paradise on earth. This was not a slow ascent from primitive life, but a sudden leap forward, a moment when humanity was gifted with a profound body of knowledge, all under the direct guidance of these divine rulers. The evidence for Zep Tepi is not just found in the broad strokes of mythology, it is etched into the very stones of Egypt. On the walls of the Edfu temple, for instance, there are inscriptions that speak of a primeval time and a homeland of the gods that was destroyed in a great flood. These texts describe how a small group of Shemsu-Hor, followers of Horus, escaped the Cataclysm and sailed to a new land, bringing with them the knowledge and the memory of the lost world. The Turin Papyrus and the Palermo Stone, two of the most significant ancient king lists, speak of reigns that stretch for thousands upon thousands of years, far predating the first human pharaohs we know. These reigns are often attributed to the Neteru themselves, a documented history of a time before recorded human history even began. Now let us bring our focus back to the Sahara. The myths of Zep Tepi consistently describe a verdant, fertile world, a paradise of flowing rivers, abundant life, and fertile soil. This aligns perfectly with the geological record of the African humid period. It was not a metaphor, it was a physical place. The Neteru, these divine architects, would have ruled from a central location, a heart of their empire. And if we allow ourselves to entertain the possibility that the Richat Structure is not a geological anomaly but a vast ruined city, then the pieces begin to lock into place with astonishing precision. The rigid structure could be the physical manifestation of that lost age, the very city of the Neteru. It was the homeland of the gods, a testament to their power and wisdom, built in a time when the Sahara was green and vibrant. The great flood that ended the first time would have been the rapid climate shift that turned this paradise into a desert, burying the city of the gods, not in water, but in the slow, relentless burial shroud of sand. So the very culture of ancient Egypt becomes a legacy of this lost time. The pyramids, with their impossibly precise astronomical alignments, could be a final tribute, a monumental effort to replicate the divine knowledge that was passed down. The Great Sphinx, with its body weathered by thousands of years of rainfall, not desert winds, stands as a silent, monolithic witness to a time when the Sahara was wet and green, a time that ended long before the first dynasties of Egypt. The entire civilization of the Nile Valley in this context is not a sudden emergence, but a survival story. The Egyptians were the children of Tepi, a people who, after the great cataclysm, devoted their lives to preserving the memory of a lost golden age. The Egyptian obsession with the afterlife and the promise of resurrection takes on a new meaning. It was not just a hope for personal immortality, but a cultural, collective hope for the restoration of Tepi, a hope for the world to be reborn, and for the Neteru, the shining ones, who had left to one day return. Perhaps the pyramids and temples were built as more than tombs. Perhaps they were beacons, colossal symbols and power centers designed to resonate with the cosmos, calling out to the very beings who had once walked the earth. So, as you drift into a restful state, consider this profound possibility that our most enduring ancient civilization was built on the foundation of a greater, more advanced civilization that came before it. That the history we think we know is merely a fragmented echo of the first time. As our journey continues, we move from the sacred text of the past to the most advanced technology of the present. For centuries, the Sahara held its secrets close, its vastness impenetrable to all but the most dedicated explorers. But in our modern era, we have found a way to see through the very skin of the earth itself. We have placed eyes in the sky's satellites, armed not just with cameras, but with a range of incredible instruments capable of piercing the veil of sand and time. This technology allows us to look past the surface and discover what lies buried beneath the shifting dunes, and what these eyes in the sky have revealed is nothing short of astonishing. The key to this discovery lies in technologies like synthetic aperture radar, SAR. Unlike standard photography, SAR uses a series of microwave pulses to create an image, which means it can penetrate through thick layers of sand and even some solid surfaces. It can distinguish between different types of materials, and most importantly, it can map out the shapes and structures that lie hidden from view. What these scans show is a world far more complex and organized than any geological explanation could account for. Imagine, if you will, looking down upon the Sahara, not as a flat, empty space, but as a ghost city waiting to be rediscovered. The radar images show lines too straight to be natural, patterns that are too geometric to be the result of wind or water. They reveal what appeared to be vast, interconnected grids stretching for dozens of miles. These aren't random scratches in the rock. They are precise angles, perfect squares, and symmetrical patterns that hint at a profound, intelligent design. We've all seen the famous images of the Nazca lines in Peru, and we stand in awe of their perfect forms carved into the desert floor. But the satellite data from the Sahara suggests something far more immense and intricate. We are seeing not just a few large figures, but the ruins of a vast interconnected metropolis, a sprawling city that must have once pulsed with life. In one area, what looks like a series of ancient roads, perfectly straight and running parallel to one another, suggests an infrastructure of immense scale. In another, ground-penetrating radar hints at what could be the foundations of monumental buildings, laid out with a grid-like precision that defies the chaos of nature. It's as if a great, forgotten city was simply covered in a shroud of sand, leaving its skeleton perfectly preserved for us to find. Naturally, the mainstream scientific community has attempted to offer explanations. They have suggested these are natural rock formations, ancient riverbeds, or even geological stress lines. But these explanations fail to account for the most baffling details. How does nature create a perfect right angle? What geological process leaves behind a series of perfectly parallel lines that run for miles? And why are these formations so often found in close proximity to other equally unusual anomalies? The patterns are simply too deliberate, too organized, and too intelligent to be mere coincidence. The data points not to a geological phenomenon, but to a vast, long dead civilization. So let's allow our minds to wander and fill in the blanks. What was the purpose of these structures? Could these geometric patterns be the remnants of an ancient power grid, a system of energy generation and distribution that we no longer understand? Or perhaps a colossal calendar, a ground based observatory to track the movements of the stars? Just as we suspect of sites like Stonehenge and Chaco Canyon, the scale of these structures implies a technology and the knowledge of physics and engineering that far surpasses anything we believe to be possible for civilization from that ancient period. But there is a more intriguing aspect to this. Much of the most compelling satellite imagery remains locked away in private and military archives. We are only granted glimpses into this lost world through declassified information and the persistent work of dedicated independent researchers. The fact that access to this data is so controlled that the most high resolution images are kept from the public only adds to the mystery. It begs the question, what secrets are so profound? What discovery is so earth shattering that it must be kept hidden? Are these buried structures a potential threat, a forgotten technology too powerful for us to wield? Or is it simply a truth too large to be revealed all at once, a discovery that would rewrite not only history, but the very foundation of who we are? As we look at these satellite images, we are looking at the silent promise of a world we never knew existed. We are staring at the blueprint of a civilization that died long ago, but whose ghost still lingers, a faint outline beneath the sand. And as we see these ghostly remains, a new question naturally arises. How could such a massive city, with all its infrastructure and monuments, possibly have thrived in a land that is now so completely arid? The answer, as we will see, lies in the desert itself, in the memory of ancient rivers that once ran beneath the very ground we are now exploring. Let's now connect the dots between the divine stories and the ghostly shapes we see from above. We have spoken of a lost city and a forgotten golden age, but an obvious question remains. How could a vast, thriving civilization exist in a landscape as harsh and unforgiving as the Sahara? The answer, as science has so definitively proven, is that the Sahara was not always a desert. Its past is a story of life, of water, and of a verdant paradise that was tragically erased from the world. For thousands of years, in a period known as the African Humid Period, which lasted roughly from 1100 to 50 years ago, the Sahara was the very opposite of what it is today. It was a land teeming with life, and the most compelling evidence for this are the ancient river systems, the great flowing arteries of this lost world. Our satellites, the very same ones that have shown us the strange geometric patterns beneath the sand, have also revealed something else. The skeletal remains of what were once colossal rivers and immense lakes. They are known to geologists as paleo riverbeds, fossil rivers, whose channels are still etched into the earth, visible from space as faint, winding scars in the sand. The most famous of these is the Wadi Howar, which stretches for hundreds of miles across what is now a barren landscape in Sudan. But it was once the southern tributary of a massive ancient Nile River. Imagine it, a river system so vast that it would have made the modern Nile seem like a mere stream. And the Wadi Howar was just one branch of a grand interconnected network that crisscrossed the entire northern African continent. This was not a world of scattered oases, but a world of continuous rivers and massive freshwater lakes. One of these, a former inland sea we now call Lake Megachad, was once larger than the Caspian Sea and would have been a central hub for any civilization in the region. Now close your eyes and let your mind's eye fill in the details of this forgotten world. Envision a lush savanna, stretching to the horizon, dotted with acacia trees and watered by broad, slow-moving rivers. The air is thick with the calls of birds. Herds of elephants and gazelles graze along the banks, and crocodiles and hippos fill the waters. This was a land that could have sustained millions, a land of unimaginable fertility and natural abundance. It was the perfect cradle for a civilization to not only survive, but to flourish. And that's precisely where our narrative connects. The advanced civilization of Tepi would have built its cities and its infrastructure around these very river systems. The rivers would have been their highways, their sources of food, and the lifeblood of their agriculture. The grand circular rings that Plato described in his account of Atlantis were said to be concentric rings of land and water. The Richat Structure, with its perfect symmetry and its opening channel, could have been a city built in a unique geological formation, which was then deliberately engineered and connected to the broader river network. The grand canals and harbors he described were not built into a dry desert, but were extensions of this natural, flowing world. This powerful civilization, with its otherworldly knowledge, would have possessed a deep understanding of hydraulics and water management. They could have diverted rivers, built dams, and created intricate systems of irrigation that would have made their kingdom an unrivaled agricultural and economic powerhouse. Their great structures would not have been hidden, but would have risen proudly from the banks of these mighty rivers, their gleaming temples and monumental buildings reflected in the clear water. But like all stories of paradise, this one had a cataclysmic ending. The geological record is clear. Roughly 50 years ago, the climate of North Africa underwent a swift and brutal transformation. The monsoons that had once watered the land began to fail. The rivers, which had flowed for thousands of years, began to dry up, slowly at first, then with terrifying speed. Lake Megachad shrank to a fraction of its size. The lush savanna turned to a barren scrubland. The soil turned to dust, and the wind began to sweep it into the vast shifting dunes that would become the Sahara we know today. This was not a gradual decline. It was an environmental apocalypse. A civilization that depended on water would have been completely undone by its disappearance. Its rivers became its burial grounds, its canals its tombs. The wind and the sand became a great, slow-moving tide that swallowed all evidence of its existence. This is why our modern-day satellite images show us the ghost of this world, the dried-up riverbeds, and the faint geometric patterns that are all that remain of the civilization that once harnessed them. The land itself holds the memory of what was lost. This sudden and dramatic change is a pivotal moment in our story. It is the missing piece that links all the other clues together. The myths of Tepi, the impossible structure of the Richat, and the buried grids we see from space. It provides a plausible explanation for how such a world could have vanished so completely and so quickly. This catastrophic event, this great flood of sand, holds a powerful parallel to the oldest stories of a lost continent. It invites us to consider a stunning possibility. Could the story of Atlantis, the story of a great island kingdom lost to a cataclysmic flood, be a misunderstood retelling of this very event? This chapter will be titled The Atlantis Connection to the Sahara, and I will make this narration well over 18, 0 characters long to continue our journey and meet your request. The soundscape transitions into something more epic and sweeping, like a grand score from a historical film, with deep strings and a sense of awe and discovery. We have journeyed through the ancient whispers of Egyptian mythology and a modern landscape of scientific discovery. We have seen the blueprint of a civilization etched into the sand and the ghostly channels of rivers that once gave it life. Now it is time to bring all of these disparate clues together and lay them at the feet of one of the greatest and most enduring mysteries of all time. It is time to ask, could the lost city of the gods, the civilization of Tepi, be one and the same as the fabled continent of Atlantis? For over 2,000 years, The story of Atlantis has captivated the human imagination. Our only source for this tale comes from the Greek philosopher Plato, who described it in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias. He painted a vivid picture of a magnificent and powerful island empire that existed beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which we understand to be the Strait of Gibraltar. He spoke of an extraordinary civilization, one of incredible wealth, advanced technology, and military might, a society of highly sophisticated people who ruled over a vast empire. Plato's most detailed and crucial description, however, was of the city itself. He spoke of a metropolis that was a marvel of engineering, a series of concentric rings of land and water, surrounded by a great harbor and connected to the sea by a long canal. He described a central island where the royal palace and the great temple of Poseidon were located. This temple, he said, was adorned with gold, silver, and precious metals, and held a monumental statue of the god riding a chariot pulled by 6 winged horses. The whole city was a perfect symmetrical masterpiece, a testament to a grand and rational design. He also chronicled the land as rich in diverse produce, fertile and bountiful, and filled with great mountains and natural resources. This was not a barren, rocky outcrop. This was a paradise. And then he spoke of its end. He wrote that after a cataclysmic earthquake and flood, in a single day and night of misfortune, the island of Atlantis was swallowed up by the sea and vanished. For millennia, we have searched for this lost continent at the bottom of the ocean, believing Plato's words to be literal truth. But what if we have been looking in the wrong place all along? What if the key to this ancient mystery lies not in the depths of the ocean, but in the heart of the Sahara? Let us now systematically take Plato's detailed description and place it against the evidence we have uncovered. The parallels are not mere coincidences. They are startling and precise. Plato's rings and the Richat Structure. Plato's most iconic description of the Atlantean city was its unique design of alternating rings of land and water. The Richat Structure is the only known geological formation on the planet that perfectly matches this description. Its immense concentric rings visible from space are an almost exact visual match for Plato's account. And its central plateau could be the central island that Plato described where the seat of the Atlantean power was located. The great, straight canyon that breaches its outer ring could easily be interpreted as the canal connecting the city to the wider world. The Pillars of Hercules. Plato said Atlantis was beyond the Pillars of Hercules. We have always assumed this meant in the open Atlantic Ocean, but the term beyond in ancient Greek could simply mean on the far side of. Standing at the Strait of Gibraltar and looking east across the Mediterranean places you in North Africa. Looking west and beyond the pillars, you are standing on the very shores that lead directly into the Sahara. It is a simple reinterpretation that completely changes the search area. The Cataclysm and the sinking. The most significant reinterpretation is the fate of the city. Plato said Atlantis was swallowed up by the sea. But what if the story was passed down through generations, across different cultures and languages, and the word for sea was simply a misunderstanding or a metaphor? What if the great deluge that buried Atlantis was not a flood of water, but a flood of sand? We know that the African humid period ended in a cataclysmic and sudden climate shift that turned the Green Sahara into the world's largest desert. Rivers dried up, lakes evaporated, and billions of tons of sand began to cover the landscape. A grand city buried by sand would be just as lost, just as completely vanished as one swallowed by the sea. The myths of Tepi speak of a great flood that wiped out a primeval civilization, a story that now seems to align not just with a hypothetical event, but with a confirmed geological reality. The natural abundance. Plato's description of a fertile, bountiful land with diverse produce and great rivers is a direct and perfect match for the Green Sahara we know existed. The ancient river systems we've discussed would have provided the water and the fertile soil for a powerful agricultural society to thrive. This resolves the central paradox of a grand city existing in the middle of a desert. Atlantis was not built in a barren wasteland, but in a fertile, verdant paradise, a world that was lost when its rivers dried up and its land turned to sand. So when we re-examine Plato's story with our new understanding of the Sahara's history and geography, the legend of Atlantis is no longer a fantastical myth. It becomes a compelling historical account, a surviving memory of a real place that was lost to a real cataclysm. The great city was not a mythical island in the ocean. It was a physical metropolis, built with impossible precision in the heart of a now forgotten garden. Its rings are still visible, a silent testament to a grandeur we can only imagine. This theory not only gives a home to Atlantis, but also explains a host of other strange details and artifacts from around the world. It suggests that the memory of this one great lost civilization, the true cradle of our world, has been preserved in fragments across different cultures. It was the lost city of the gods for the Egyptians, the lost continent of Atlantis for the Greeks. It was the original source of knowledge and architecture that inspired civilizations that came after it, a beacon of a lost golden age. As you consider this profound connection, you must also consider the question it raises. If Atlantis truly existed, and if its ruins are still buried in the Sahara, what other civilizations might have existed before our recorded history began? What other stories and cities have been completely erased from our books? We are only just beginning to read the first few pages of a much longer and more incredible story. If the Sahara was once a green paradise that held the heart of a great lost civilization, and if that civilization was the true origin of the Atlantis legend, then we are forced to confront a far more profound question. What does this mean for our entire understanding of human history? The conventional timeline we have all been taught, a linear progression from primitive hunter-gatherers to the first great empires of Sumeria and Egypt around 50 years ago, might be fundamentally wrong. What if our history books are not the full story, but merely the first chapter that survived the Cataclysm? The evidence for this is not just buried under the sands of Africa. It is scattered across the entire globe, waiting to be re-examined. These are the anomalies that traditional archaeology has struggled to explain, the out-of-place artifacts and monuments that hint at a more complex and mysterious past. They are the ghosts of a time before the Great Flood, a time that the ancient Egyptians called Tepi, a world that was erased from memory but not from the planet itself. Let us journey to a small hilltop in southeastern Turkey, a place so stunning in its implications that it has been called the single most important archaeological discovery of the last century. It is here we find Göbekli Tepe, a site that completely upends our timeline. Discovered in the 1990s, Göbekli Tepe is a series of monumental stone circles, a vast ceremonial complex made of colossal T-shaped pillars, some weighing up to 20 tons. These pillars are carved with intricate images of animals, scorpions, vultures, spiders, and show an incredible level of artistic and engineering sophistication. The most staggering fact about Göbekli Tepe is its age. It dates back over 12,000 years to a time when our history books tell us humanity was still in the Stone Age, a primitive society of hunter-gatherers who had not yet learned to farm or build permanent settlements. The existence of Göbekli Tepe proves that a high degree of social organization, advanced craftsmanship, and complex astronomical knowledge existed thousands of years before we believed it was possible. It was a site so significant that the people who built it deliberately buried it as if to preserve it from a coming catastrophe. Was this the work of a sophisticated Stone Age society, or was it the legacy of a greater civilization that existed before? Now let us turn our attention back to Egypt, to the oldest and most enigmatic monument on the Giza Plateau, the Great Sphinx. Conventional Egyptology dates the Sphinx to around 2500 BC, attributing its construction to the pharaoh Khafre, but a growing body of geological evidence challenges this date entirely. Dr. Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University, has presented compelling evidence that the enclosure wall of the Sphinx shows signs of deep water erosion. These are not the horizontal lines left by sand and wind, but the vertical fissures left by thousands of years of heavy, sustained rainfall. The last time the Giza Plateau received that kind of rainfall was during the African humid period, which ended around 50 years ago. This suggests the Sphinx could be twice as old as we've been told, a silent monument built by a civilization from a pre-dynastic, pre-desert age. Was this incredible structure another legacy of Tepi, a colossal symbol left behind by a forgotten people who had a deep understanding of cosmology and the Earth itself? The world's oceans also hold their own secrets. Off the coast of Japan, near the island of Yonaguni, lies another controversial structure, the Yonaguni Monument. Discovered by a scuba diver, it is a vast, submerged formation of symmetrical stone terraces, pyramids, and a perfect right angle that many believe is too precise to be natural. While its origins are fiercely debated, some geologists and archaeologists believe it is a man-made, stepped pyramid that was submerged when sea levels rose after the last ice age over 10 years ago. If they are correct, it would be another piece of undeniable proof of a lost civilization that predates all of our known history, a civilization with the engineering skills to build monumental structures that have now been swallowed by the sea. What we are looking at is not a series of isolated mysteries, but a cohesive and interconnected pattern. There is a global story emerging, a story of a lost pre-cataclysmic world. It was a world that existed before the Younger Dryas impact, a period of global climate upheaval that triggered the end of the last ice age and the rapid rise in sea levels around 12,000 years ago. This was a time of immense planetary violence, and it would have wiped out any global or advanced regional civilizations that existed. A few survivors, perhaps those in remote or protected areas, would have carried forward the shattered remnants of their knowledge. This explains the sudden, seemingly miraculous emergence of civilizations in both Sumeria and Egypt around the same time. The Egyptians did not simply invent their knowledge of astronomy and mathematics out of thin air. They inherited it from the survivors of a golden age that came before. Their texts and their myths, with their references to the Neteru and a first time, are not fantastical stories, but a profound and fragmented memory of a lost world. The pyramids were built not as a new beginning, but as a final, monumental effort to preserve the sacred knowledge of the past. They are a library of stone, a beacon for a civilization that they hoped would one day return. This view of history is a humbling one. It suggests that we as a species have been on this earth for a very long time, and that the story of our greatness has been interrupted by catastrophe. It asks us to look at the world around us with new eyes, to see not just rocks and ruins, but the ghost-like remains of a magnificent, forgotten past. What other secrets are hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to rediscover them? And what would it mean for our future to finally fully remember our past? We have journeyed through the great myths and the forgotten landscapes, piecing together a stunning new vision of our past. We've seen a lost continent in the Sahara and the ghosts of its rivers beneath the sand. But as we dig deeper, we must confront a far more unsettling possibility, that some of these secrets are not merely lost to time, but are being actively and deliberately hidden from us. This is the chapter of whispers in the dark, of censored documents, and of truths that are considered too dangerous for the public to know. We must ask ourselves, are there archaeological clues hidden from the public, discoveries so profound that they would rewrite history, and are they being kept secret to protect the narrative we have all been taught? The reason for such a cover-up is simple. Our current understanding of history is the foundation upon which our modern world is built. It dictates our place in the universe, our religious beliefs, and the entire framework of our scientific knowledge. To admit that an advanced civilization existed thousands of years before we thought was possible would be to pull the first block from a carefully constructed tower. It would challenge the very notion of human evolution, the timeline of our origins, and the supremacy of our current technological era. It would force a complete paradigm shift, and such shifts are not always welcomed. They are resisted by powerful institutions, by governments who fear social upheaval, by religious organizations who fear the loss of their doctrine, and by academic institutions who fear the obsolescence of a lifetime of work. It is in this climate of control that we begin to find whispers of secrets. Let us look at a few of the most compelling examples of what some believe are suppressed discoveries. First, we turn our gaze to the heart of the Balkans, to a place in Bosnia called the Visoko Valley. Here, a series of hills rise from the landscape with an unnatural precision. To the untrained eye, they are just hills, but to a team of geologists and archaeologists, they are something else entirely. The hills, which include the so-called Pyramid of the Sun, exhibit perfectly symmetrical slopes, a precise orientation to the cardinal directions, and an alignment with the North Star. Inside, they have discovered a vast network of underground tunnels, meticulously constructed of a material that has been radiocarbon dated to over 29,000 years old. This would make them, if confirmed, the oldest and largest pyramids on the planet, predating the Egyptian pyramids by tens of thousands of years. But the official response from mainstream academia has been one of outright dismissal. They have fiercely resisted all efforts to excavate the site, labeling it a fraud without any comprehensive investigation. The story of the Bosnian pyramids is, for many, the perfect modern-day example of what happens when a discovery challenges the established historical narrative too profoundly. Next, we look at an ancient artifact that defies all logic, the Piri Reis map, discovered in 1929 in the library of the Ottoman Sultan. This is a genuine 16th century map drawn by the Admiral Piri Reis. While a fascinating historical document on its own, it contains a truly baffling secret. The map, a compilation of much older source maps, depicts the coastline of South America with astonishing accuracy, but the most incredible detail is that it shows the coastline of Antarctica with no ice, a coastline that was not officially discovered until the 19th century. Even more astonishing is that the map shows a landmass that has been confirmed by modern seismic surveys to exist beneath Antarctica's 2-mile thick ice sheet. For such a map to exist, it would have to be based on source documents from a time when Antarctica was not covered in ice at least 12,000 years ago. This implies a lost civilization with the technology and the geographic knowledge to chart the entire world. The Piri Reis map is a ghost from the past, a piece of irrefutable evidence that there was a global civilization with global knowledge long before our own, a fact that is quietly acknowledged by some, but never truly integrated into our public history. We can also consider the whispers of secrets held beneath the sands of Egypt itself. The prophet Edgar Cayce, in his trance readings, spoke of a hall of records hidden beneath the Great Sphinx, a library of the lost civilization of Atlantis that contained the entire history of humanity. While a prophecy, not a fact, it has inspired generations of researchers. And what do these researchers find? Seismic scans around the Sphinx have indeed revealed a number of unusual man-made chambers beneath its massive paws and surrounding enclosure. But any official effort to investigate these anomalies has been blocked. Access is denied, expeditions are canceled, and the data is often sealed. The great monuments of Egypt, our most enduring symbols of ancient history, may contain our most profound secrets, yet we are prevented from looking inside. These are not just isolated stories. They point to a pattern of scientific resistance, of bureaucratic denial, and of carefully guarded information. It is the story of institutions defending the status quo. The existence of a sophisticated pre-cataclysmic world would render our current history as an incomplete and flawed fragment. It would force a reevaluation of every single thing we thought we knew about our origins. So, as you drift deeper into a state of rest, consider this sobering possibility. We are not just searching for clues in the desert, we are searching for a truth that someone, somewhere, is trying to keep buried. Our own history may be considered a state secret, a story so powerful and so transformative that it has been deemed too dangerous for us to know. But the clues, the anomalies, and the whispers of a forgotten world are still there, waiting for us to put them all together. They are hidden in plain sight in the hills of Bosnia, in the ancient maps of the Ottoman Empire, and beneath the very monuments we have revered for thousands of years. We've explored the myths of a divine golden age, the undeniable physical evidence beneath the sands, and the whispers of a history that institutions are trying to suppress. Now we must turn to the most unsettling piece of the puzzle. The reason why so many of these promising clues remain unexamined. Across the vast expanse of the Sahara, there are places on the map that are simply off limits. They're designated as military zones, national security areas, or regions so politically unstable and dangerous that no one is allowed to enter. On the surface, these explanations seem logical, and we accept them without question. But what if these forbidden zones are not about protecting the present, but about concealing the past? What if they are strategically placed to guard the greatest archaeological secret on Earth? The official narrative is a convenient blanket for a much deeper truth, a truth that suggests the government and other powerful entities are not just aware of the lost civilization, but are actively controlling access to its most significant sites. The reason for this control is not just to maintain the historical status quo, but perhaps to contain something more, something technological, something powerful, or something that would fundamentally change our place in the universe. This is a story of deliberate concealment, of vast, empty stretches of desert that are secretly the most guarded places on the planet. Let us look at a few of the most compelling examples of these forbidden zones and the truths they might be protecting. First, we turn to the incredible Tassili Najer Plateau in Algeria. This is one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world, known for its tens of thousands of ancient cave paintings and rock engravings. These masterpieces of art, some dating back over 10 years, depict a time when the Sahara was a lush green paradise. They show hunting scenes, animals we now associate with savannas and rivers, and the daily life of a people who thrived in a land that is now arid and lifeless. But among these stunning depictions, there are paintings that defy any conventional explanation. They show bizarre, non-human figures with large, rounded heads and strange, featureless faces, figures that have been dubbed spacemen. They appear to be wearing what looks like sophisticated headgear and suits, and are often depicted as towering over ordinary people. While these rock paintings are a public treasure, it is widely known that the most remote and sensitive parts of the plateau are under strict government and military control. Expedition permits are denied for these areas, and unauthorized access is met with a swift and severe response. What are they protecting in these remote canyons and rock shelters? Could the rock art be a documentary record of the divine beings of Tepi, the Neteru, and are there physical artifacts or perhaps even the remains of their technology hidden in the very places the art depicts them? The art may be the public clue, while the real secrets are locked away in the off-limits areas. Next, we must consider the military-controlled zones in the very heart of Mauritania, where the Richat Structure, the Eye of the Sahara, lies. While the Richat itself is a known landmark and is accessible, certain areas within its massive concentric rings and on the perimeter are designated as restricted. They are not just empty stretches of desert, they are used for military drills and are patrolled with a vigilance that seems disproportionate to the emptiness of the land. We have to ask, what is so strategically valuable in this barren landscape that it requires constant military supervision? We know from private radar data that there are deep subterranean anomalies in and around the Richat Structure. Could these military zones be a perimeter around the most promising areas for excavation where government-funded teams operating in complete secrecy, are already at work. It is a scenario straight out of a conspiracy thriller, but in the context of what we've discovered, it becomes chillingly plausible. Perhaps the military presence is not about protecting the nation, but about containing a truth that would change our understanding of humanity's entire history. Finally, we look to the remote Enidi Massif in Chad. This is a fortress of sandstone and rock, a labyrinthine landscape of deep canyons, natural arches, and ancient water sources. It is one of the most inaccessible regions in the world, a natural fortress that would have been a perfect refuge for survivors of a great cataclysm. While beautiful, it is also a difficult and dangerous place to access. But it is within these inaccessible areas that a few intrepid explorers have reported seeing strange, perfectly smooth rock faces and unnatural tunnels that appear to be man-made but defy any known historical timeline. The remoteness of the entity, combined with the presence of government-controlled patrols, suggests that this natural fortress may also be a cage, containing not just a beautiful natural landscape, but the very remains of a forgotten world that took refuge there after the great climate shift. What is being protected in these forbidden zones is the most profound part of our story. We are not just talking about ruins or pottery, we are talking about the possibility of advanced non-terrestrial technology. Perhaps a forgotten energy source, a device that manipulates gravity or time, or a library of knowledge that would instantly accelerate our technological progress by thousands of years. We are talking about the very possibility of non-human or pre-human remains, the bodies of the Neteru, the shining ones that would provide the ultimate proof of a lost divine era. And perhaps most unsettling of all, we are talking about active sites, places that are not dead but dormant, places that still emit strange signals, or house a technology that is still operational, waiting for someone to find it. The very existence of these forbidden zones is a testament to the power of the secret. They are a monument to our own institutional fear, a quiet admission that there is more to our history than we are allowed to know. They tell us that the Sahara is not just a tomb, but a carefully guarded vault, and the key to that vault may lie in the monumental structures that are buried within it, waiting for us to ask the right questions. What were they, and what were they for? We have journeyed into the heart of the conspiracy, touching on the idea that something profound is being protected in the forbidden zones of the Sahara. Now, let's dare to imagine what that something might be. Let's move past the whispers and the satellite data and fill in the blanks with the incredible possibilities that the clues have given us. We will now turn our gaze to the physical manifestation of this lost world, the very ancient megastructures that are now buried by time, waiting for us to rediscover them. Imagine the Sahara not as a flat expanse, but as a vast archaeological site, a hidden museum of a forgotten age. What would we find if we could simply remove the miles of sand that have buried its past? We would not find small settlements or primitive huts. We would find monumental constructions of a scale and precision that defy our modern understanding. We would find the physical remnants of the civilization of Tepi, the grand city of Atlantis, its bones perfectly preserved by the very desert that was meant to be its tomb. The Richat Structure, the Eye of the Sahara, would not be a mere geological oddity. It would be a sprawling, man-made capital, a testament to a forgotten art. Its concentric rings would be colossal walls, not of stone, but of a polished, unearthly material that once gleamed in the sun. The rings would be interspersed with a system of canals and waterways, fed by the great rivers that once crisscrossed the land. Their waters are deep blue against the light-colored stone. The central island would not be a plateau, but the heart of the empire, a citadel of unbelievable power. It would have been home to a great temple, a monument of sacred geometry, perhaps a golden spire that reached into the heavens, its purpose not just for worship but for communicating with the stars. The entire structure would have been built with a precision that suggests a deep, almost magical understanding of mathematics and engineering. The very ground would hum with the memory of its purpose, but the lost city would be more than just a capital. It would be a part of a much larger, interconnected network of megastructures, each with a unique purpose. Scattered across the vast green savanna that was once the Sahara, other monumental structures would have stood. We might find colossal energy generating sites, monuments built not of mere stone, but of giant crystals or unidentifiable metals that could have harnessed the sun's power or the geothermal energy from the Earth's core. These would not be simple power plants, but beautiful, symmetrical constructions, their forms designed to channel energy in ways we no longer understand. They would have been the power source of the entire civilization, providing unlimited energy for their homes, their technology, and their grand construction projects. We might also find ancient observatories, monuments far more complex than Stonehenge. These structures would have been perfectly aligned not just with the sun and moon, but with distant constellations and the very tilt of the earth itself, perhaps before it was altered by the great cataclysm. Their purpose would have been to track the celestial movements, to understand the cycles of the cosmos, and to predict the great events that would eventually wipe them from the face of the earth. These observatories would be libraries of stone, their very construction a record of a cosmic knowledge that has been lost to time. But the most incredible discovery might lie not on the surface, but deep beneath the sand. Remember the seismic scans that showed anomalies beneath the Sphinx? What if the entire Sahara is home to a vast, interconnected network of subterranean cities? These would be not just simple chambers, but a grand system of tunnels and underground habitats built to provide refuge from the coming cataclysm, a self-sustaining world beneath the desert. These subterranean cities would be the ultimate secret, the final resting place of their knowledge, their technology, and perhaps their very population. The myths of a hall of records beneath the Sphinx would not be a prophecy, but a memory passed down, a memory of a hidden library that holds the key to a forgotten past. The sheer scale of these hypothetical megastructures would tell us something profound about the civilization that built them. This was not a primitive society. This was not a people just beginning to learn how to farm or build. This was a civilization at its peak, with a deep understanding of physics, engineering, and the very fabric of reality itself. They built not just for survival, but for eternity. Their structures were a testament to their mastery of their world and their reverence for the cosmos. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the inexplicable precision of Göbekli Tepe, the colossal size of the Unaguni Monument, they are not isolated wonders. They are all fragments of a single global architectural legacy, pieces of a worldwide puzzle that originated from the same source of knowledge. The Sahara, therefore, is not a barren landscape, it is a time capsule. It is a silent witness to a grand civilization that built monuments to a knowledge we have only just begun to recover. These buried megastructures are the final, tantalizing proof of a world that was lost. They are the physical evidence of the gods who walked the earth, a story we must now turn our full attention to. We must ask, who were these beings? What was their true nature, and what happened to them? The ruins tell us part of the story, but the myths tell us the rest. We have stood in awe of the physical remnants of a forgotten world, the grand city buried beneath the Sahara, the impossible structures that defy our timelines. But a monument is only half of the story. It is a shell without a soul. Now, we must ask a question that takes us from the realm of science and archaeology and into the very heart of human consciousness. Who were the architects of this lost world? Who possessed the knowledge, the power, and the vision to build a civilization so grand that its ruins dwarf our modern creations? The answer, according to the ancient texts of multiple cultures, lies in the myths of the gods who walked the desert. The ancient Egyptians were not a primitive people worshipping fantastical beings. They were a civilization with a profound and detailed memory of a time before their own. Their stories of Tepi the first time were not merely folklore. They were a historical record passed down through generations of the era when the world was ruled by the Netheru. The Netheru were not gods in the mythological sense, but a highly advanced civilization of beings who lived and walked on Earth alongside early humanity. The texts described them as a civilization that descended from the heavens, bringing with them a profound body of knowledge and technology. They were not divine in the way we use the word, but they were so far beyond the comprehension of early humans that they were revered as gods. Their shining bodies could have been a technological description, perhaps referring to advanced suits of armor or a form of energetic shielding that protected them in a world that was still recovering from a cataclysm. Their ability to shape the land and move colossal stones may not have been magic, but a mastery of acoustics, levitation, or a form of anti-gravity technology. Their true nature was technological, but their impact on humanity was nothing short of divine. The Egyptian king lists, such as the Turin Papyrus, detail the reigns of these Neteru for thousands upon thousands of years before the first human pharaoh. This wasn't the reign of a single individual, it was a dynasty of beings, a single continuous and highly intelligent civilization that brought order to a chaotic world. They taught humanity agriculture, writing, medicine, and the sacred geometry that would define their most magnificent monuments. They were the teachers, the benevolent rulers who uplifted humanity from a primitive state to a civilized one. They were the architects of a grand paradise, a green and verdant land that was later lost to a great cataclysm. This narrative is not unique to Egypt. It is a shared global memory. In ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerians told a nearly identical story of the Anunnaki, beings who descended from heaven to earth. They too were credited with bringing civilization to mankind, teaching them how to build cities, farm the land, and understand the cosmos. The Sumerian stories speak of a great flood that wiped out their world, a flood from which a single survivor, Zusudra, was saved by the gods. This mirrors not only the great climate shift that turned the Sahara into a desert, but also the Egyptian myths of a great flood that ended Tepi. Even Plato's story of Atlantis contains the same themes. He described a golden age where the island was ruled by demigods, the children of Poseidon. These demigods were wise, benevolent rulers who created an enlightened society of incredible technological and social sophistication. The Atlanteans' eventual downfall came not from a flaw in their wisdom, but from a moral corruption that caused them to lose favor with the gods and led to the destruction of their world. This is the same narrative of a lost golden age and a benevolent, advanced civilization that we see in the myths of Tepi and the Anunnaki. It is the story of a shared historical memory, a fragmented but consistent account of a time when the world was governed by beings of immense power and wisdom. The ultimate question is, what happened to them? The myth suggests a number of possibilities. Some stories say that after the cataclysm, the gods simply left, ascending back to the heavens, leaving humanity to rebuild and to find its own path. Others suggest that the Neteru were not immune to the catastrophe, that some perished in the great flood of sand, their bodies and their technology buried in the ruins of their own cities. And some myths hint at a third, more profound possibility, that they did not leave but retreated. They went into the earth, into the subterranean cities and chambers they had built, to wait for a time when humanity was ready to receive them again. This is the great legacy of Tepi. The pyramids and the temples of ancient Egypt were not just built as tombs. They were monuments of a lost golden age, a last grand effort to preserve the memory of the gods who had walked among them. They were libraries of stone, encoded with a knowledge that they hoped would not be forgotten. The Egyptians were not worshipping mythological figures. They were mourning the loss of a magnificent civilization and hoping for its return. And so we must end this chapter with a thought that should guide us into the next. If the myths of the gods are true, if they were real beings of flesh and blood who were here on this planet with us, then what does that mean for our future? Are they truly gone? Or are they still here, watching us, waiting for us to rediscover the truth of who we are? The answer, as we will explore next, may lie in the very DNA of human existence itself. We have journeyed to the ends of the earth, and the beginnings of time, searching for a lost civilization and the divine beings who may have created it. We have looked to the stars for their origin and to the sand for their resting place. But as we stand at the precipice of this incredible story, we must now ask the most important question of all. What does any of this have to do with us? The answer, according to the clues we've uncovered, may lie not in the ancient myths or the buried ruins, but within ourselves. It may be hidden in the human blueprint, a sudden leap in evolution. Mainstream science has a well documented timeline for human development. We are told the story of a slow, gradual evolution, a process of incremental change over millions of years, from our earliest ancestors to the modern human. It is a story of slow and steady progress, a continuous climb up the evolutionary ladder. But in this neat and tidy timeline, there's a profound and unexplained anomaly, a moment that defies all conventional logic. It is an event that scientists call the Upper Paleolithic Revolution, or the Great Leap Forward. Roughly 40, 0 to 50, 0 years ago, something extraordinary happened. In the blink of an eye, in a moment that is almost imperceptible on a geological timescale, humanity underwent a radical and inexplicable transformation. Our ancestors, who had been using simple stone tools and living in a relatively primitive manner for hundreds of thousands of years, suddenly and without warning began to create. They developed complex language, not just simple grunts or signals, but a sophisticated system of communication. They began to create breathtaking cave art, symbolic representations of their world and their inner thoughts. They fashioned intricate tools, musical instruments, and jewelry. They developed agriculture, metallurgy, and a new abstract form of consciousness. It was a sudden explosion of creativity and intelligence that has no logical place in the slow, grinding process of natural selection. Where did this sudden leap come from? Why, after millions of years of gradual change, did humanity suddenly awaken? Mainstream science struggles to provide a satisfactory answer. They attribute it to a chance mutation, a sudden cognitive shift that just happened to occur. But this explanation is unconvincing. It is a convenient label for a profound mystery. It is a mystery that fits perfectly with the narrative of a lost civilization and the myths of the gods. What if this great leap forward was not an evolutionary event at all, but a direct result of an external influence? What if this sudden awakening was not a random mutation, but a deliberate upgrade? What if the benevolent beings of Tepi, the Neteru, who walked the desert and built magnificent cities, did not just teach humanity, but gave them a new genetic blueprint, a seed of their own advanced knowledge, a divine intervention that allowed our brains to suddenly access a level of consciousness and intelligence that we had not earned through evolution? This would explain why our history is not a continuous, linear climb, but a story of a sudden start, of a magnificent and inexplicable awakening. The myths and texts from around the world all speak of this event. The stories of Prometheus giving fire to man, of gods bringing the gift of civilization, of divine beings creating humanity in their own image, they are not just metaphors. They are a profound, collective memory of a time when an advanced civilization shared their knowledge, their DNA, or both, with a more primitive race. The Neteru and the Anunnaki didn't just build our cities, they built us. They gave us the capacity for language, for abstract thought, for the very consciousness that allows us to ask these questions. Our most defining characteristics are not the products of slow evolution, but the inherited legacy of a lost golden age. But the story doesn't end there. If a genetic blueprint was given to us, what else did it contain? Is it possible that this blueprint is not fully active within us? Could there be a vast, untapped potential within the human mind, a dormant power that is a relic of our divine ancestors? The existence of savants, individuals with inexplicable genius in a particular area, whether it be mathematics, art, or memory, could be a tantalizing clue. They are not the product of a normal evolutionary process. They are a glitch, a momentary glimpse into the vast, untapped potential of the human mind. They are a living, breathing testament to the profound knowledge that may be lying dormant within all of us. So, as you drift into a state of rest, consider this final thought. We spend so much of our time looking to the stars, searching for extraterrestrial life and a grand narrative of our place in the cosmos. But perhaps the greatest mystery of all, the greatest secret, is not out there in the vastness of space. It is within us. We are the legacy. We are the monuments. We are the living blueprint of the gods who walked the desert. And the final question we must ask is, what are we going to do with the gift they gave us? We have journeyed through the mysteries of our forgotten past, from a lost city beneath the sand to the divine whisper in our DNA. We have seen a world of incredible technological achievement and profound spiritual wisdom, all of which was tragically erased in a single cataclysmic event. But this story is not just about what came before us. It is a mirror reflecting what is happening to us now. It is a story that forces us to confront a chilling and fundamental question. Is history a linear progression of endless growth, or are we caught in a great cycle of history, destined to repeat the mistakes of the past? Ancient cultures from all over the globe, from the Hindus of India to the Greeks of Plato's time, shared a similar belief in a cyclical model of time. They spoke of great ages, a golden age of perfect harmony, a silver age of decline, a bronze age of conflict, and finally, an iron age of chaos and destruction. Each age would end in a great cataclysm, a reset of the world, before a new cycle would begin. This was not just a myth, it was the foundation of their understanding of the cosmos. And in our journey, we have found what appears to be a powerful, real-world example of one of these cycles. The era of Tepi and Atlantis was a golden age, a time when divine beings lived on Earth and humanity was gifted with a profound body of knowledge. It was a time of unimaginable technology, where cities were built with sacred geometry and an understanding of energy we can only dream of. But as Plato meticulously recorded, this golden age was not to last forever. The Atlanteans, he said, were a people who became corrupt. They turned their divine gifts away from benevolence and towards conquest and power. They lost their moral compass, and in doing so, they lost favor with the gods. It was this moral decay and technological hubris that ultimately led to their downfall, a cataclysm that, in a single day and night of misfortune, wiped them from the face of the earth. Now, let us turn that mirror to our own world. We too are a civilization of unprecedented technological power. We have harnessed the atom, explored the far reaches of space, and created a global network of information that is both a marvel and a potential poison. We have built our own modern metropolis, interconnected and brimming with a hubris that rivals any civilization in history. We face challenges that, in retrospect, seem to be ripped from the pages of Plato's account. Our climate is changing at an alarming rate, a result of our own industrial actions, threatening to unleash a global cataclysm of flood and famine that would make the end of the Green Sahara seem small in comparison. We live under the shadow of weapons of mass destruction, a technological power so immense it could wipe us out in an instant. And we grapple with the ethical implications of artificial intelligence, creating a form of consciousness that could one day render us obsolete. Are we not, in our own way, a civilization that is becoming too powerful for its own good, using our gifts for conquest and profit rather than for the benevolent advancement of humanity? The myths and monuments, therefore, are not just a historical record, they are a warning. They are a cautionary tale passed down through the millennia by the few who survived the last cycle. They tell us that a civilization's end is not inevitable, but it is a consequence of a choice. The great cataclysm that ended Tepi and the era of the gods was not a random act of fate. It was a climax, a final and terrifying outcome of a civilization that forgot its purpose, lost its way, and used its God-given gifts to sow the seeds of its own destruction. The sudden end of the Green Sahara, the great flood of sand, may not have been a random geological event. It may have been a cosmic level reset, a final act to erase a civilization that had grown too dangerous. But this story is not without hope. The fact that the myth survived, that the knowledge was passed down, is a testament to the idea that the cycle can be broken. We, as the inheritors of the Atlantean blueprint, have a unique opportunity. We are the first civilization in this new cycle to rediscover the truth of the last one. We can learn from their mistakes. We can choose to use our technology not for destruction but for the benevolent stewardship of our planet. We can use our knowledge not to conquer but to uplift. Our destiny is not predetermined, it is a choice. We have been given the gift of consciousness, a gift from a lost world, to give us the wisdom to break the cycle. So, as you listen to the rhythmic sounds of the ancient world fading into the noise of our own, ask yourself, are we on the path to repeating the past, or are we finally ready to remember where we came from and build a future that is worthy of the divine blueprint that lies within all of us? The final chapters of this story are not yet written. They are being written by us right now. And the truth, as we are about to find out, may be closer than we think. We have reached the end of our journey, but this is not an ending, it is a beginning. For years, the truth has been hidden in plain sight, a colossal fingerprint in the desert sand, a lost story in ancient texts, and a whisper in our very DNA. We have connected these dots, creating a picture that challenges everything we thought we knew about our world. We have pieced together the incredible story of a lost golden age, of a green Sahara, of the divine beings of Tepi, and of the cataclysmic event that buried their civilization. We've come to understand that the myth of Atlantis may not be a myth at all, but a buried chapter of our own history. But to simply know this is not enough. The future of the past is not written in a book. It is a story that we, the inheritors of this legacy, must now write ourselves. This is a call to action. It is a call to a new kind of exploration, one that uses the tools of the present to uncover the truths of the past. For too long, the established narrative has been guarded by a select few, but with today's technology, the truth is no longer a secret that can be held captive. We now have access to a new generation of satellite imagery, with technologies like high-resolution LiDAR and multispectral imaging that can see through the faintest traces of soil to reveal what lies beneath. These are the tools that can definitively map the buried city of Atlantis, not with speculation, but with hard, undeniable evidence. We now have ground-penetrating radar that can create a three-dimensional map of the subterranean world to find the Hall of Records, the power centers, and the hidden structures that the myths have spoken of for millennia. The technology to prove this theory exists today. All that is missing is the collective will to use it. This is a call to individuals everywhere to become modern-day explorers. The era of the lone, heroic archaeologist with a pickaxe and a shovel is over. The new era is one of citizen science and open-source data. We can demand that our governments and space agencies make their high-resolution satellite data publicly accessible. We can fund independent research projects and expeditions to these forgotten corners of the world. We can use the power of the internet to crowdsource the analysis of data, allowing a global community of curious minds to find the patterns and anomalies that a few academics might miss. The truth of our history should not be a secret. It belongs to all of us, and it is our responsibility to claim it. The greatest barriers to this new exploration are not physical, they are institutional. They are the academic institutions that fear the upheaval of their established timelines, the governments that fear the loss of control over a powerful truth, and the media that fears a story too big for their narratives. We must challenge this resistance. We must demand transparency and accountability. We must question why certain zones in the desert are forbidden and why groundbreaking discoveries are so often dismissed or actively suppressed. We must insist that the search for the truth of our origins is a fundamental human right. And what would happen if we finally succeeded? What would it mean to unearth the ruins of Atlantis from beneath the sands of the Sahara? The consequences would be nothing short of a global revolution. First, a scientific and historical revolution. Our entire history would be rewritten, history books would be changed forever, and the timelines of our civilization would be extended by thousands of years. We would have to reevaluate every assumption we've ever made about humanity's past, from the origins of our intelligence to the development of our earliest societies. The mystery of the Great Leap Forward would be solved, and we would finally understand the true nature of the ancient anomalies like Göbekli Tepe and the Great Sphinx. Second, a technological and social revolution. The discovery of Atlantean technology, the secrets of their energy, their engineering, and their knowledge of the cosmos could lead to a global technological leap forward. We could find the keys to clean, sustainable energy, a solution to our climate crisis, and a new understanding of physics that could change our world forever. We would be a united humanity, no longer defined by our separate nations or religions, but by our shared, incredible origin story. The realization that we are all children of the same lost world would be a force for global unity more powerful than any treaty or political movement. The future of the past. A call to action, part 3.3. The music reaches its crescendo, a final, powerful, and hopeful climax that resonates with the sound of a triumphant choir. But the most important consequence of all would be a spiritual and moral revolution. The story of Atlantis is not just a tale of technology and power, it is a cautionary tale of hubris and moral decay. By rediscovering the past, we would also rediscover the warning it holds for our future. We would see, in the ruins of their great city, the fate of a civilization that forgot its purpose and abused its gifts. The story of Atlantis is a story of a civilization that became too powerful for its own good, and it serves as a powerful mirror for our own journey. It is a final warning passed down through the millennia about the path we are currently on, and so we stand at a crossroads. We can continue to believe the incomplete history we have been taught and risk repeating the mistakes of the past, blindly walking toward a future that is shadowed by the same hubris that buried Atlantis. Or we can choose a different path. We can choose to remember. We can choose to uncover the truth, to embrace our shared origin, and to use the gifts we were given to build a future that is not defined by destruction, but by a new golden age, a future worthy of the divine blueprint that lies dormant within all of us. The story of a lost city is not over. It is a story that is waiting for us to finish it, and the time to begin is now.